welcome. It is wonderful that so many of you gifted us with your time today. We're going to have a great conversation about workforce, pathways, and how K-12 systems are responding to the future of work, to changing conditions in the economy and labor force. You see this, it is a conversation that is dominating a number of different areas. You see it all over this conference. I was back at the first ASU GSV conference, and like workforce issues just weren't even dealt with at all. And now it's like, feels like it's half the sessions. We did an analysis at AEI of all the governor's State of the State addresses. Workforce issues were the most talked about education issue amongst all the governors. So it is an area that's dominating public policy. It is an area that's dominating employers. They're just faced, even with this booming economy, of the challenge of helping to find skilled workers. It tops the need of small businesses. Every month there's a small business survey that NFIB does. The number one challenge facing small businesses is finding skilled workers. There's 7 million jobs that are available that just require higher levels of skills than there are workers to fill it. And so we have systemic challenges facing our K-12 system, facing our higher education system, and facing a really archaic and aging workforce system. And we have emerging challenges with globalization, with automation, as more and more jobs are getting disrupted, as different functions are getting automated and replaced with AI. Often, what you'll see in all these different studies talking about how automation is sort of destroying jobs or components of jobs, the one thing that is never talked about is the flip side of that are all these new jobs that automation is creating. And that every new job that is being created by a business is becoming a higher skilled job. And so we're going to have a conversation today about how is education responding to it. We have an awesome panel. I won't go through all their bios because it's in the app, so make sure to use the app. We're going to have a conversation for about 20 minutes and then invite you to be part of that conversation too by asking some questions. But what I want to do is talk a little bit about this, about systemic change. So how are we changing systems to respond to these changing conditions and the complexities of it? And what's awesome about this panel is that we have leaders changing the system at different units. We have John, who's changing the system at the unit of school, so operating a series of schools. We have Cate, who's doing that at the unit of a city. And then we have Paymon, who's doing it at the unit of a state, all wrestling with very similar questions, similar themes, and so we'll explore that. And maybe, John, I'll turn to you first. Tell us a little bit about the Butler Tech model, what it is, and then and just describe a little bit about how you're trying to meet the needs of employers.
Okay, great. Well, first, I just want to say the reason why I went into education. I was the kid that sat in the back of the classroom, so for those that are in the back of the classroom, I welcome you. I came into it with the sense that this assembly line model of public education just wasn't working for me as a student. I also have a brother that had a very negative experience about public education in general, and it did not meet the needs and has had long-term ramifications throughout his life. So Butler Tech really is a culmination of a lot of work over the past 25 years in developing a system that eliminates that one-size-fits-all model, and we describe it more like a jungle gym. So when you're a kid and you were on the playground and you started on the jungle gym, you started on one ring, and then you went to the right, and then you went to the left, and then you went down, upwards and outwards. And that's really where the transformation of a workforce is going to continue to grow, and the development of our public high schools, which we're a public high school that serves 11 school districts, where we need to go with our students. So we offer pathways for credentialing and industry credentials to get them directly into the workforce. We offer 76 college course offerings in partnerships with our colleges and universities in our area. We also work with our business partners to create apprenticeships and co-ops and giving students opportunities to find their why. What is it that they want to do with the rest of their life, or for the next 6 months, or for the next 12 months? Whatever it is, that we want to make sure that we have a pathway for them. And that's what we've built and designed to be a very nimble and adaptive model to meet the need of the whole child.
I want to go to Cate in a second, but tell us a little bit that I know one of the innovations you've introduced in your system is that there's a 4-day school week. So what do you do with the 5th day? What is this innovation?
Yeah, so we're calling that the 5th day experience. And really it came out of a little bit of frustration and necessity. We were talking about the school calendar, as many school districts do with their boards of education and their leadership teams. And out of frustration, because I could not get 11 school districts to agree when spring break was going to be, and I know that there are all kinds of fantastic academic things that happen on spring break, not as many that we want everybody to remember, but we really kind of out of frustration said, what are we going to do with this spring break situation? And sort of flippantly we said, let's just get rid of spring break. And so we kind of took that idea and sort of that entrepreneur thought and said, what would we do with it if we created Fridays that were non-student days? And so these are non-scheduled days, but what would a student experience if they had an opportunity on Friday? And it really blossomed from there in talking with our businesses, our partnerships that we already have with our universities about offering experiential learning that can complement the programs that they're already in. And so with that, we're launching it next year, and we've had a tremendous response from business and industry and students as well.
Was this a tough sell to parents? Was it hard to convince parents that, did they feel like it was going to shortchange on the education side? Did they resonate with the internship, apprenticeship?
You know, a lot of our students already have internships and co-ops, and so the work that they do, they're typically doing outside of the normal 5-day week, or they're doing it during the school day, and we're having to have them make up their work, so to speak, when they return to their lab or to their classroom. So it really became a freedom for them, the students, as well as the parents seeing an opportunity. And for a lot of our students, working 6 hours in a paid internship can mean the difference for their families, whether they make rent, whether they make their house payment if they're fortunate enough to have a house.
So Cate, let's turn to you. Talk a little bit about, because you're tackling a lot of the same questions, but from a city perspective. So what is YouthForce NOLA, and how are you exploring this issue?
Yeah. So YouthForce NOLA is an education, business, and civic collaborative with a shared vision that we want our public school graduates to be the most sought-after talent for hiring and advancement in our region's high-wage, great jobs. And so with that, we've got essentially at this point all of the open enrollment high schools in our city, which means all of the high schools that don't have selective sort of admissions criteria working with us. We've got 7 middle schools. We just started piloting middle school work. We have 150 employer partners. We've got 8 training provider partners, both third-party providers and higher ed institutions of higher education. And then we have a really vast and growing network of civic and community partners. So this is our economic development organizations, our city, our United Way, our Urban League, our Junior Achievement, all of us saying we have got to ensure that our graduates know about these great jobs, have the skills to pursue these great jobs, and really are leaving high school with a plan as to what they're going to do next in terms of education, training, and work, and have the technical skills and soft skills to really navigate all those opportunities and, again, successfully get these jobs and advance in these jobs.
So I mean, that sounds just like a massive coordination challenge with
Yes.
all those. So what's the secret
Yes.
sauce there besides you? Like how are you approaching the coordination
Right.
function?
I mean, I think that it's really, relationships really matter, and a shared vision really matters. And so we have a sort of, our staff serves then as the backbone of this shared effort. We have 12 organizations that serve as our collaborative steering committee, and then we have sort of stakeholder-specific advisory councils. So we have a school leader advisory council, the SLAC, training provider advisory council, the TPAC. It's, we're not particularly sort of imaginative in our initialisms and acronyms, but so it's really just about what is that vision, and then we have some specific goals that we're working to achieve annually that everybody agrees upon. Nobody is quibbling, and so we're measuring our success on students developing job-specific technical skills. Let's count how many are getting basic and advanced credentials. We agree we want students to have meaningful work experience because we believe in learning by doing, and we know employers don't want to be anybody's first job, so we're going to count how many kids are completing meaningful work experience. We agree that our young people need soft skills so that they can navigate all these opportunities. Soft skills are great for jobs. Soft skills are good for your relationship with your grandma and college success. So we agree on soft skills. We're still working on the measurement one on that one, but we've made a ton of progress in the lexicon and the standards and the approach to teaching soft skills. And so measurement will come next. So I think it's sort of agreement on vision, agreement on goals really enables us to sort of cut to the chase and stay focused in ongoing collaboration.
So I'm curious, just for both of you, what is the unit of sort of the labor market that you're anchoring towards? Is it this, what is most in demand in the city, or is it the state?
For New Orleans, it's the region. So we work with our regional economic development organization to do the labor market analysis. So they're pulling the data from EMSI, they're looking at burning glass, and then they're convening employers to do a lot of sort of just ground truthing. What are the jobs? What's the demand? What are the projections? What are the pathways? That said, our priority skill clusters in New Orleans, Digi-IT, health science, skilled crafts. Within skilled crafts is sort of super cluster, environmental, water management, energy. With that, 80% of what we're doing in New Orleans is the same in North Louisiana, is the same in Chicago. So I think we sort of feel strong validation in that and want our students to know about the transferability, but we also want them to stay in New Orleans. We want them to help us grow a strong New Orleans.
And for folks that don't know, EMSI and burning glass, what are they?
They have tables outside, so they can do the official pitch. So EMSI is a sort of data analytics platform of labor market information. Really terrific. I encourage you to buy all the modules because you get all the great data.
What's important about it is that so much of the government data sort of lags, in massive ways. And so there's now a group of companies that are doing almost like real-time analytics by looking at both job descriptions and the skills required, as well as like resumes and what are their skills on there. So it identifies labor market gaps in a very granular level. Yeah. John, just real quick, how are you anchoring on the labor market? Is it just within the whole state, or is it with your very localized region?
Well, it is much more of a regional approach, and we have a number of European companies that are in the Southwest Ohio region. So skilled manufacturing continues to be a growth area for us. I know much to the thought that manufacturing is dead in the United States. Actually, in our region, there is quite a resurgence. Now, the type of employee that they need is significantly different. They need to be diversified in their skills, whether it's CNC machining, whether it's welding. They need to have some electronics and robotics training as well. So we're really trying to make sure that we give them a complement of those skills. And then the second area is in healthcare. But when we think about healthcare, and students, when they think about healthcare, they either think I'm going to be a doctor or I'm going to be a nurse. But there are over 200 job descriptions at a single hospital. And so trying to give them the opportunity to see what it is that those opportunities that are out there, we use our business advisory committee members to share that information with our students and the experiences that they get in finding out whether they want to do that for the rest of their life or the beginning of their career. And some, we call it failing forward, that they figure out, no, that's not for me and I want to do something else. We don't want them to do that in their second and third year of college.
Got it. Paymon, let's bring you in. Talk a little bit about what is Propel and how are you thinking about this from, you're operating in one state, but thinking about New Jersey too, so Louisiana, New Jersey, is that right?
Yeah, so we're in 2 states, and it's worth mentioning we are a weeks-old organization, and so in terms of having some long track record to talk about, we hope to eventually get to that point. Aspirationally, what we're aiming to do is to have communities, so where the labor market is, where the economic engine is, for that to be the unit of change, for communities to take ownership of their high school graduates and connect them to prosperous life opportunities. And so for us, we're a team of K-12 educators. That's our background. I was a superintendent for the last 5 years, and what we saw in our local communities were just massive disconnect. And I'm sure that this has been Cate's experience in New Orleans, in that the K-12 system wasn't meaningfully connecting to employers, and certainly community colleges are there to bring those 2 entities together, but they're oftentimes kind of mimicking what four-year colleges are doing, and they're kind of lost in the equation. And so what we're trying to do, and it's always funny to be, to be in a session and see words like breakthrough and disruptive. What we're really trying to do is make the whole of the community greater than the sum of the parts. by systematizing the transition from high school to a career. So practically speaking, what we do is we work backwards from the needs of employers, focusing in on mid-skill jobs, so some degree of training below an associate's degree. And we map that into high schools by way of a course second semester seniors take. And it took me far too long to realize a 17-year-old in Camden had no idea what jobs were in their own community, yet alone what credentials they needed for those jobs, yet alone where to get those credentials and what's the relative value of each, what public subsidies there are to underwrite their tuition. And so we do that work for them. Post this course, after high school graduation, we do three things. We underwrite their tuition by stitching together various public funds. We pay them a stipend to minimize opportunity cost. As you all know, that's the #1 reason kids drop out of 2- and 4-year colleges. And third, we provide them weekly mentorship and case management supports to get them to the finish line.
Talk a little, because all of you, you haven't used this word entirely. We talk about counseling, but it's also like a little bit of a GPS of helping students figure out that map as far back and figure out like the directions and the pathways to take. How are you approaching that sort of guidance and giving students that empowerment?
Well, for us, it starts in this course. But I have to say, there's also a change in mindset that we are pushing with educators. Whether we want to label it this or not, we have a college for all model in our country. And so inside of the schools we have experience in, it's basically 4-year college or bust. And so building these alternative pathways, if you will, I don't always love that term, but building these more nuanced and different pathways for young people requires some mindset change. But I think the experience of this course and what we're trying to bring to bear, and I'm sure the work that Cate can speak to much more intelligently than I can at this point, is really about connecting those life opportunities in realistic ways for students so that they can meet individuals who have these jobs, and ideally those who look like them and have similar backgrounds and experiences. And they see that sense of possibility. They go and visit the site of the employers and see this work in action. And again, for far too long in the places where I've worked, that wasn't happening. And kids were reflexively being pushed out of their community and into other institutions of higher education, many of which were lower tier and not oriented to support their needs. And so what we're trying to do is create a quicker path to economic stability. And again, that begins by that exposure.
I want to compliment your thoughts about the college pathway for all. And we talk about college and career readiness, in which we already distinguish a separation between those two, those that are going directly into a career and those that are going to college. And I think we've seen, or I've at least experienced in some of the sessions that I've been to over the past day or two, is that the trajectory of when a student attends college or when a student obtains a credential right now is based on the system that we've created as adults in the public education system, and that transition to the workforce or on to college or on to the military. I think we need to do a better job of blurring that line to say the start of college may be at 16. As a sophomore in high school, which is what happens at Butler Tech, for some students. Other students may say, I want to go directly to the shop floor, work on my machining certificate, and allow the company to pay my way through college, but not yet, because that's not what my pathway is. So I applaud you for differentiating that it is really about a career pathway and a choice for their life about their trajectory of where they're heading.
Cate, how are you helping students navigate these pathways?
So with us, there's sort of this twofold sort of key navigation pieces. One is this expectation of a 5-year plan. And I want to be clear, YouthForce NOLA is 4 years old, and we are now writing into our 2025 plan an expectation that all graduates, in addition to the academic skills, the soft skills, the technical skills, the work experience, will actually have a 5-year plan. And so we're figuring out if it's digital, is it a portfolio, is it a passport, what does it look like? But so with that, it's a, sort of the idea would be there's a 5-year plan you develop freshman year of high school. How are you going to navigate high school towards what you think you want to do? And then how are you constantly revisiting that plan? One of our design principles is it's better to have a plan and change it than no plan at all, because we think that's going to give, so we're calling it a strong, flexible plan. So with that, I think we've sort of been doing ad hoc planning with young people, and we want to get much more explicit about that in our next turn. Second then is this soft skills work. When we say soft skills, just to be clear, we're talking about problem solving, communication, collaboration, personal mindset, social awareness, and inevitably I forget the sixth, and it's never the same sixth one. So it's sort of six power skill building blocks. And we see that these power skill building blocks, they are what both give our young people a sense of confidence. We keep saying empowerment, that to navigate and to pursue this plan. These are skills and mindsets that they already possess, and this is about them capitalizing upon those skills and mindsets, and really, again, sort of having power to move into new settings and to act upon that plan. And so to date, we really started the soft skills work in the framework of training young people before their paid internships. We're getting so much traction and excitement from the educators who were doing the coaching in the internship program. They were all saying, I'm going to go back and run my classroom differently next school year, that we realized that that was going to be the way we were going to get the soft skills to more students, not just those who could do the summer internship. So then we launched a soft skills teacher fellowship. So we're training, English 2 teachers, Algebra 1 teachers, engineering teachers. How do you run your classroom differently so students are learning these meta skills and these power skills? And we're now in the phase where we're figuring out with our city's youth intermediary, how do we take some of this out to the after school providers and to the opportunity youth providers. So really by 2025, the goal would be every young person getting a diploma in the city of New Orleans, they should be soft skills powerful. And to get there, we're going to need to we're building soft skills dojos effectively, so that we're getting all the adults in the city to be black belts and yellow belts and blue belts in soft skills empowerment. So it's the plan, and the soft skills is really the sort of the wayfinding path.
I love that. Soft skills. I'm like a white belt, so that's.
But you've been to the dojo, and you might have the karate-ji, right? So we're sort of headed in the right direction. Yeah.
Yes. All of you have talked about industry certifications, which is interesting. So for the audience, demystify, what is an industry certification? Why are they important? How are you folding it into your programs? We'll start with Paymon.
So it's a huge focus area for us. So when I say we work backwards from the needs of employers in mid-skill jobs, these are jobs that typically the training is 3 to 6 months, and it comes with an industry credential. And I'd say the key benefit is that it allows for portability. So if you move to another city, part of the country, as a medical assistant, if you were to get credentialed there, you can therefore find your way more easily into a job. And so that's our focus area, from the high school course where they do career navigation and learn professional skills, and then move their way into one of our training programs. And we partner with pre-existing organizations, mostly community colleges. We help prepare them for that end-of-term certification exam.
So and I would just add on that. I think we have a set of employers in New Orleans, I'm sure it's the same in many regions and jurisdictions, who are like, credentials, I don't think so. And to a certain extent, they have been burned by sort of credential engines that are really just pieces of paper and don't actually represent skills. So with that, we in New Orleans have had to do a lot of recalibration with both our educator partners, our employer partners. Again, sort of another one of our design principles is skills over pieces of paper. But ultimately, to thread the needle on this, we also, to incentivize schools to be offering the credentialing coursework, to get to a common sort of currency across employers and across pathways, everybody needs to agree then on a discrete set of credentials. In our state accountability system, and I really do think Louisiana's system is a strong one, and encourage folks from other states to look at it, credentials are incentivized in high school accountability in the same way as AP coursework, dual enrollment coursework, and so forth. And so we've really gotten I think, faster adoption and buy-in from some of our educator partners, because they know that it's going to matter, and they see the state signaling to them that a 4 on an AP exam, that is one set of currency to help students have a leg up in their post-secondary paths. Having an industry-recognized credential that has been truly validated by our regional employers, that is another way for young people to have a leg up into whatever their post-secondary pathway is. So I just think it's really about, there is I think credentials, people say micro-credentials, badges, we just have to get really clear. They should represent a set of skills. It is not paper for the paper. It is paper for the skills.
Yeah, so in Ohio, there's actually a graduation pathway. You can obtain what's called a 12-point credential, and that can be a graduation pathway for you. In addition to that, when you're in an apprenticeship program or an internship with a company can sign off saying that they have those necessary skills. I know that doesn't necessarily meet that portability that we talk about if going to other companies, but there's a diversification of multiple pathways that a student can obtain through the Ohio Department of Education to have a graduation pathway. So it, I think, speaks to the whole child, and it speaks to the ability for students who are gifted in certain areas to still find success with a pathway that I wouldn't necessarily call it an alternate pathway, but a beginning pathway for them. But it's definitely recognized by many of our business and industry partners, and we vet that through our business and industry people.
That's great. We're going to turn it over to you for questions in a second, but as you're preparing to ask your questions, I have one question. This is off script for both Paymon and Cate. You both were highly accomplished leaders of school systems and could pretty much chart whatever path you wanted to take next. You could have gone into philanthropy, you could have gone into another school system, and both of you chose to go into this workforce coordination space. Like, what was, like, how did you come to that decision that this is where you want to spend the next couple of years with your passion?
Yeah, I mean, I think I told John when we did a pre-call last week, you know, I feel like I found the job I want to do for decades if I could, and I really see it as a culmination of past experiences, which is both, I was a chief of data and accountability, so did all this systems work, but ultimately where this makes sense to me in knowing that, you know, we focus so much in, okay, we got them to 12th grade graduation. What are the metrics that go with that? And then the question always is, and where are they now? And with that, then, you know, how do we think about, sort of really getting to economic prosperity? I think, you know, my story is always, I'm first generation American on my father's side. His family came to the United States with we're going to make more money, we're going to do better, you know, sort of with this, the American dream. And so I always thought education was the path to the American dream, you know, and through being a chief of data and accountability and through all these other work, I realized that, you know, 12th grade graduation was not going to get our kids to the American dream. So I see the work at YouthForce NOLA as both sort of me helping really like push the envelope on what does it mean and how can we really help education get our kids to the American dream, and also just sort of draws on my love of working across silos and sort of the sort of connectivity piece. So it's sort of both like my skills and mindsets and, you know, and sort of a personal passion.
So very similar. I mean, I would say following the data and then following anecdotes, we are seeing record high school graduation nationally, record high college enrollment rates nationally. But then when you peel that onion, you see the college dropout crisis and the debt crisis. And it was so startling to see that up close and personal in the school districts I've been a part of, and especially the past 5 years in Camden. And we would just ask ourselves, what more can we be doing to support our students to get to and through college? And then I think about Ebion, who was a student of ours and was valedictorian at Big Picture Learning Academy. And within 6 months, she dropped out of Stockton University because her mom had a 7th child and asked her to come home to help make ends meet. And no matter how well-oriented Stockton was to support her and her family, she probably would have dropped out. And we didn't have anything for her. And I saw her working as a cashier at Wegmans just a few weeks after she had made that decision. And then, you know, it was around my 3rd year as a superintendent where our local hospital, Cooper Hospital, which is really a landmark institution in the city, came to us and said, we really need medical assistants and we can't figure out how to fill these spots. Can we create this apprenticeship program with you all? And they did it strictly as a bottom line need. And we decided to jump into this mostly for political reasons. The chairman emeritus of the hospital was a very political figure, and it really was not mission aligned to our work. We jumped into it. We didn't really put much attention into it. You know, fast forward to the ending, there was a student who I had a personal relationship named Rakim, who had decent enough grades and I think had like a 21 on the ACT and would have otherwise gone to a low tier 4-year college. He did this. I talked to him at graduation day. So I didn't mention he had a child when he was 16 years old. He had married the mother of his child. He'd tell me that his daughter is enrolled in a daycare and would have otherwise been bouncing around different couches in Camden. And how like this job just fundamentally changed his life trajectory. He still had his sights set on getting an associate's degree. And I think most of all about the world that his daughter is now in, and how the environment she's in is buffered from the toxic stress and trauma that so many kids in Camden face. And that was kind of the beginning for me of like, wait a minute, why aren't we thinking about this on a systems level?
Great. Questions from all of you? And we have someone with a microphone. So great. So maybe raise your hand and we'll bring the microphone to you. Not all at once. All right, great. Oh, good.
Hello, I'm from Ohio, and I wonder if you heard the keynote this morning by Michael about the connective mechanism between education and industry. Did any of you hear that? Okay, I'd love to hear you talk about what is needed, what do we need to build as connective mechanisms between education and industry and communities, because you've done that and you're doing it, and I think it's a rare and growing need for us to do.
Great. Great. Who wants to take that?
I think you two should take
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it's a no-brainer to a certain extent, which is ultimately we want our young people to have great jobs. We want them to be productive, engaged citizens. We want them to be happy. When we at YouthForce, when we surveyed our young people, we asked them, define life success. Their responses boil down to stability, prosperity, and happiness, right? So we want our kids to be happy. We want our kids to be prosperous. In New Orleans, the way we're going to get there is we need there to be jobs for our students, our young people to have. We need for those to be good jobs. In New Orleans, we've learned the hard way that you can't be a one-industry town, so we need to diversify well beyond oil and gas. So we need to have sort of a diversity of jobs and a diversity of the industry. And so with that, then, it's sort of, to a certain extent, it's like, okay, great, we've got the talent pipeline, we've got the jobs, presto changeo. But really building that bridge to get them to those jobs and to sort of get them into those career lattices, it does require, it's a lot of coordination. It's about it's also about naming folks' lanes and naming folks' roles. And then to a certain extent, I do think that regions would benefit from having an intermediary like YouthForce NOLA that is then enabling the regional economic development organization to bring their strengths, insights, and their employer lens to a conversation, having the school district bring their lens of overseeing schools and holding schools accountable for outcomes, bring that perspective. The Urban League brings their perspective of representing the Black community and really helping uphold equity for Black New Orleanians, and they are an important part of the collaboration. So it's really about then, to a certain extent, I would encourage a lot of cities that there's sort of, this is a cross-sector thing. This is something that really then needs a neutral place for folks to focus specifically on what is it going to take to build those bridges. It can't be automated. I mean, it really is. You sort of come down to a set of human functions and a set of human sort of alignment. So lots of things are getting automated. We need to stay on top of knowing what's being automated, leveraging what has been automated in terms of sort of labor insights, data, et cetera. But then this is actually just still about getting the folks who are just traditionally not talking to each other. And when they do talk to each other, they are speaking very different languages. And so it's sort of about doing the translation and cultivating that shared vision.
John?
So I would add to that that there are groups and organizations and businesses and education entities that have a growth mindset, that have accepted the fact that we've admired the problem long enough, and latch on to them and completely ignore the ones who are still in that fixed mindset that we can't change it, that we shouldn't be trying to reach 100% of the students 100% of the time. I mean, I know our graduation rate is 98.4%. It disappoints me that we leave behind a percentage of students. And so from the business perspective, for those businesses that are saying, give me more employees and they're going to pay $10 an hour and it's not going to be life-changing for that student or for them becoming a family, I'm not going to work with that business. And for those that say we've worked 16-hour shifts, we've done that for 50 years and that's the way we're going to do it, I won't work with those businesses. The universities that say, this is our college tuition credit hours rate, and this is what we charge, and it's an exorbitant amount, we won't work with them. If they're willing to negotiate all of those things because it's about the students, if they're really about the students, and you can figure it out pretty quick as to who's really about students and who's not.
Great.
So we test them, and then we test the market, we find that niche, and then we expand the service. So those naysayers then come on board later, which is okay and fine with us because it's helping everybody at the end, but we want to find those early adopters.
I love the idea of applying growth mindset to an organization, not just we always think about it for an individual student, but that's great. Other questions? Oh, yes, thank you.
So all of your models are very disruptive, and kind of that's the title of the session. I'm interested in how you think about learning within shared organizations around the disruption. So specifically, as you learn, how do you share ideas into broader sets of systems to try to spur adoption of ideas more rapidly for change?
Great. Thanks. Who wants to have that?
First, I think there needs to be a feeling of safety among your staff, that they can tell the CEO and superintendent that you're crazy, you shouldn't be thinking about doing that, you should think about this direction, and then give some valid reasons why. So I think there needs to be safety among peers to know that we don't know all the answers, but that we're going to do action research, which leads us to begin to be able to take some risks. Most public entities, I mean, I'm a public school district, we are risk averse. We do not want to take risks with things. And, you know, the conscious decision when I was hired as the CEO superintendent at Butler Tech, I told them this is what you're getting as a leader, and these are the people that we're going to have in our organization. And if you don't want to be a part of that type of mindset, to have the safety to be able to say what you feel is right to help students, and the vulnerability of a leader to say you're wrong, because I've made tons of mistakes along the way. But what I do is I have a group of people that help prop me back up when I have fallen, and listen to your students. They will absolutely tell you what they need, when they need it, and how they need it.
Yeah, and I think just the sort of thought I had, the point I shared earlier just around sort of common vision and shared goals, I think leads then to the ability to have quantitative conversations then that lead to the qualitative insights that then can lead to continuous improvement. You know, I think we've got the goals, sort of we say to ourselves, it's not the goals, it's what the goals make you do, right? And so, sure, we got to hit those, we got to hit our annual targets, but with that common alignment across all of our collaborating organizations, we're not actually quibbling with we know what we set out to do. And so what went wrong along the way? And then I would just sort of underscore what John said, just in terms of it is about having trust and relationships both within your staff and then with your collaborating organizations, and making sure you then have the time and space to do that reflection and debriefing to understand, okay, the goals made us do this, was it the right thing, and how do we continue to iterate and improve upon it?
All right, last minute whip around for the panel. We have lots of distinguished leaders in the audience today, but one of the groups of audience members that we have policymakers, we have philanthropists, and we also have investors. So what would be one thing you wish an investor, policymaker, or philanthropist would do to help accelerate your work? Is it removing a barrier? Is it helping to fund something in particular to help accelerate it? You can pick, but what's one piece of advice you would have? And we'll start with John.
Policymakers, I would say, look for deregulation. Businesses talk about this all the time, that they sometimes policymakers prevent the ability for businesses to prosper and thrive because of the policy environment that is created that stifles that creativity. I would say the same goes with education. There are a lot of creative thinkers that are in the education field that want to do a lot of creative work in helping students, because that's why we went into education to begin with. So policymakers, that's definitely what I would advocate for them.
Wonderful, thank you.
I would say pushing employer behavior. I mean, for us, at the end of the day, democracy lends permission to capitalism, and we're working from kind of the zero-sum number of jobs within every community. And so employer behavior dictates the work that we do. And so the more we can get them to understand this isn't always some trade-off between efficiency and community, like it can be a rising tide that lifts all boats.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah, I think I would sort of encourage folks to just sort of really, I know we want to sort of think at sort of, is it scalable, is it scalable, is it scalable? And at the same time, I think that there's just sort of an incredible regionalism to these efforts. You know, we have folks come visit us in New Orleans, and by the end of the day, they've heard terms like lagniappe and calliope, and you know, and we name all of, you know, all the Cajun, all the Creole, all the things, and you know, certainly like one can prepare a young person for workforce without, you know, lagniappe, but there is sort of, there's a culture to the way we work together. There's a culture to the way we're preparing our young people that certainly they could leave New Orleans and be successful elsewhere in the country, but there's a culture then to the way we're doing our work that I think, again, is transferable, but I don't think that funders and others and policymakers should be looking for a one-size-fits-all model. You know, I think there's like a core something, and then we have to know that any given region, 20% of it is going to be different and unique to that region.
That's great. Great. Will you join me in thanking this great panel today? So, great. Thanks so much.